Hi everyone, welcome to the Superhuman Switch, a mind, body, business empowering podcast for achievers guaranteed to switch your superhuman levels on. I'm your host, Saf. Today I'm joined with Glen Stollery. Correct.
Well done.
The CEO of Les Mills. And Glen was basically in the fitness and wellness industry for more than 20 years and have been active by supporting a lot of companies and startups in the launch and the expansion. We're going to dive into his passion to this space and how he's taking care of himself along the way. Glen, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for the invite, Saf.
It's amazing. One day, I still remember in Dubai Summit, Fitness Summit, I've seen you on one of the stage. And usually I have like a bookmark of the people that I'm really interested to discuss with. And you were on the list, so it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Privilege, thank you. I have to admit, I've done television, I've done radio, got a face for radio. This is my first podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
that's again, it's a privilege. We'll start with this one because I think you have an idea now about the objective of Superhuman Switch and the background why I'm really interested to dive into the fitness and wellness. But I think you are the perfect person that we can really dive into the conversation of the health and wellness. And I'm really interested before we dive in, just to give a little bit to the audience, who's Glen?
Well, how long have we got?
As long as you want. It's an open play.
Yeah, as you said at the top of the show, I mean, I've been in the fitness industry my whole life, not actually by deliberate choice. Mm-hmm. So, started while I was a student at school, always wanted to be an architect and orientated all of my studies while I was at school, doing technical drawing and physics and chemistry and stats and calc, all orientated towards that goal. But at the same time, I have always been involved in some kind of physical activity. Did martial arts from the age of 10, my first black belt at 15, second black belt at 17. And when I got to university, I was paying my way through varsity by being effectively one of New Zealand's first personal trainers.
Okay.
And it got to a point where I was dreading it was an 5-year degree, and in my second and especially in my third year I started to dread going to university and just was excited to get into the gym. And then I realised that I had this passion for fitness. So after 3 years, after a lot of anxiety and a lot of, you have these like questions around, you've sunk 3 years into this degree and you don't want, and I left and went into the fitness industry, and I haven't effectively left it since. So It was something that I realised I had a passion for kind of by accident.
That's it's sometimes we fall into a path of passion without even realizing it. But since then you stayed in New Zealand, right? It's this journey started there and you continued the whole personal training.
Yeah, so I left after I left university. I was personal training, but I started my first company. Mm-hmm. And it's because I saw an opportunity in the market. It was in the sports supplement industry.
Okay.
New Zealand had, we're a dairy, lots of dairy, so had some great protein powders.
The goat per capita, I think, the goat or sheep.
Yeah. More sheep and cattle than probably I really want to talk about on this podcast. But we didn't really have kind of any of the exciting American brands, and that's where all the innovation was. So I just started bringing some of them in, and that was actually how I set up my first company at the age of 21. Mm-hmm. Just bootstrapped it, $500 I started it with, and kind of made up a letterhead and got a PO box address and tried to make myself look like I was a big organisation. And just bought in a shipment from the US, sold it, invested that money back in, and just continued to do that while I kind of worked as a PT at night and a doorman on weekends as a bouncer. I guess 10 years of martial arts helps. Okay. And and that's kind of snowballed from there. I ended up selling that company after 10 years to a PE firm who flipped it immediately to Abbott Laboratories. Okay. And ended up working for Abbott Laboratories for kind of spearheading their nutrition function in Asia Pacific.
That's Abbott. It's I think it's the leading organization when it comes to the solutions or supplements, I would say.
Yeah.
You have multiple brands, but it's funny because you're 21 years old, you are in the space of fitness, and you started the personal training, and you jump into the entrepreneurship that comes with it. And since then, you didn't leave. Why?
Well, I did leave once.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of how I realised, I mean, I've kind of found my calling again by accident. So when I sold the company, I had to sign a 5-year, actually, restraint of trade that locked me out of the industry. So once my contract, I was managing director for their Asia Pacific business for 3 years. Once my contract was over, Abbott are a great company, but they kind of killed the innovation. They're very, actually, believe it or not, pharmaceutical companies are very risk averse.
Yeah.
And so my passion for, I guess, that side of the business really wasn't there. So I left, but I was actually locked out of the fitness industry for 5 years. And that's when I realised, you know, one of my personal, I mean, you talk about your 4 pillars, and one of my personal pillars is purpose. And I found that when I left the industry, it's that you just feel lost. You feel like a ship without a rudder. So, and that was when I realised that I have to do this. This has to be something that I have to be involved with.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a period when I left, not by choice. It was actually, you know, I was locked out, and that was really tough. That's probably one of the toughest, most challenging parts of my life, because everything I'd known was gone.
I heard a lot of stories about people who they sold their concept to organization and they were locked out actually from the whole ecosystem. And surprisingly, after a while, they get the excitement at the beginning, but they will end up like, okay, question mark that.
Yeah.
Not what I have done, but what's next. And this is, I think, the uncertainty puts you in the place, especially that you are passionate to that space. So what happened after that?
So that was actually when I found Les Mills. You could probably carve my career up into 10 years of being an entrepreneur and a business owner, and 10 years of working with Les Mills. And Les Mills' mission is a fitter planet. And that's something that's incredibly important to me. I have to be making a difference. I have to be contributing. And so the alignment was there. So I went to after I sold my business, I moved down to where my parents live. It's a little town on the coast of New Zealand called Mount Maunganui. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. But and I moved down there, and I kind of I was really just asking myself, what's next for me? You know, exactly as you said, I everything I'd known was gone contractually, and I was walking into a gym, and I walked into a class, and I saw this martial arts class to music, and as I said before, I'd kind of been doing martial arts my whole life.
Yeah.
And kind of jumped in and thought, this is something really, really cool. And it was a Les Mills body combat class. And that was the first time, even though Les Mills is a born and bred New Zealand brand, it was actually the first time I'd actually entered a Les Mills class and fell in love with it. And one of the instructors, after I'd been doing it for a while, tapped me on the shoulder and said, have you ever thought about becoming an instructor? You've got really great technique. And that kind of started my journey with Les Mills. So, yeah, been with them ever since.
Again, with no expectations. You just joined the club and things happened.
Exactly, yeah.
It's that's interesting. Let's focus a little bit, because we had a laugh before we start about the name Les Mills.
Yeah.
And again, I told you our background, because in Lebanon we speak a little bit of French, and we all thought that it's a French company.
Yeah.
So I know that you received this joke several times, but why? I'm interested to know now. To explain the background of the name, because it's definitely not a Kiwi brand.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, as I said to you before, if I had $1 for every time someone had asked me if it's a French company, I'd be lying in a cabana in the Bahamas. But so the founder of the company is Leslie Mills, and he's actually an ex-Olympic athlete, and he's also an ex-mayor of Auckland, and he set up one of the first commercial gyms in New Zealand in the 60s.
Okay.
And it was so early in the industry that the gym actually had to have alternate days, male and females.
Okay.
And so that was the first real commercial club. It was reasonably small, and then it grew, and then it grew. And if you ever go to Les Mills now, 10% of the entire population of New Zealand have been a member of a Les Mills gym.
Okay, it's a national brand.
It's a national brand. It's a household brand. If you say you work for Les Mills in New Zealand, someone will ask you, what gym do you work at? Because it's a chain of clubs up and down the country.
I see.
But yeah, the name comes from the founder, Les, and now Les Mills International, which is the international part of the business, which is effectively licensing Les Mills programming all over the world. It is now in 20,000 clubs around the world, including 500 here in the GCC.
Yeah.
And it's just basically our entire mission is to make people fall in love with fitness, make fitness fun and engaging. And so there's 20 programs, everything from dance, strength, martial arts, which as I said before, is what hooked me in.
Yeah.
And our idea is just to make people want to exercise, make it something that they look forward to. It's social, you've got a great instructor, music, energy, and you want to bring your friends along and make it an important part of your day. And so that's what we do, yeah. And as I said, very, very purpose-led, and that was kind of what made me fall in love with the brand as well, because there's a lot of alignment there.
It's surprising because it's when I jumped into the whole landscape of the fitness and I was doing my own personal research, everything as information resource was about from Les Mills. And you have a lot of like online content. Actually, this is like 3-4 years ago. Now we have influx of information. But the footprint of the brand, it's massive. But the surprising fact, the joke about it, that we thought it's a French. And they are English articulated. Yeah. It's nuts. It's a Kiwi brand.
And I guess the irony is we're probably one of the best kept secrets in the industry, because you could be doing, if you head to one of the gyms, any of the gyms in Dubai, for example, and do a class, you're probably doing a Les Mills class, though you may not know it. So the brand itself kind of flies under the radar a little bit, but as you said, the footprint is significant. So, millions of people exercise with us per week, and we just have a mission just to really just make the world a fitter planet. As I said, just get more and more people engaged in exercise by making it fun, making it something you want to do.
Yeah. Moving to the GCC, you moved in 2013, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. And what made you make the decision to move to a totally different environment? Because again, we spoke briefly about the whole environment of the Middle East and how the unique and the bad and the good. But tell me about this journey.
So that was during the period where, there was that uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife got offered a job. She worked in law, and got offered a job with a law firm here. Mm-hmm. And I was locked out of the industry in New Zealand and Australia,
during
but
that
not
period.
Internationally.
Okay.
And so that was when I was like, well, I've really got nothing to lose. Exactly. And so I moved here and started working for, at the time, we had an independent distributor for Les Mills. We didn't own our own office here. And so I started working for them for about 18 months, and then my wife got pregnant with our son. Mm-hmm. And in 2015, we moved back to New Zealand, and that's when I started working for Les Mills HQ full-time, setting up their international operations all over the world. So, set up the business. We ultimately ended up setting the business up in Dubai, spent a year, 18 months in Sao Paulo, Brazil, setting that business up, Tokyo, Japan, Shanghai, China.
Amazing.
So, kind of my role was flying around the world, dragging my newborn son and wife in tow, all around the world, setting up our businesses. A really, really interesting role, and again, really exciting, because every time we set up a business, we grow the footprint and we get more people moving.
That's true. I noticed something really interesting, that when you had this movement from the place that you were locked out from the ecosystem, that you found the energy. It's something that I sense that there was something really bothered you, that, okay, you were stuck in place that you cannot do anything in an industry that your passion. So just briefly, take me through the emotional state when you decided to move to GCC and you start kicking things off.
Yeah, well, so again, I would love to tell you that there's been this deliberate plan, and everything that I've done has been just so well laid out, and everything I've done has come from a place where I've made a mistake and learned from that mistake and learned something about myself. And as I said, when I left when I sold my business and left that part of my life behind, it was really, really tough. It was probably one of the toughest periods of my life. So in a really, really dark place, like, you question everything. And that's when I found, that's how I knew I've got to be making a difference. I've got to be making people moving. I've got to be getting more people engaged in, our industry, the fitness industry, because if I'm not, I can't just go sell widgets. There was a period I went and worked for a technology company, and it was the only time in my life I've taken a job for the sake of having a job. And it was really because, okay, well, I can't work in fitness, so what do? I've kind of got to do something. And that was not for me. So when the opportunity came up in the Middle East to kind of really double down and grow the Les Mills brand and grow the footprint and obviously it's a homegrown. I'm a Kiwi, so which is why I've got this horrible accent, which I apologise for.
No, I have a lot of amazing Kiwi friends.
And Les Mills, despite the name, is a homegrown Kiwi brand. So be able to, and also involved in the industry I love. So so that decision was actually very, very easy. I had nothing to lose.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
I could stay in New Zealand and kind of be locked out, or I could move to the Middle East and start to grow, grow the industry again.
You found yourself again.
So it was a very, very, very easy decision.
Yeah, and do you feel the same energy till today? I'm curious. Just
So I do, and we talked about this before. It's because this part of the world is so dynamic, and the industry is growing so quickly.
True.
So in some of our more mature markets like the US or the UK or Europe, the industry 25% of the population have a gym membership. That's arguably, we're still a long way to go. 75% of the population don't.
True.
But here, if you take, say, GCC, Dubai's a little bit better, but in somewhere like Saudi Arabia, 2-3% penetration.
Absolutely.
We've got a long way to go.
Absolutely.
And so the growth and the difference that we're making, and obviously Saudi, for as an example, it's one of the pillars of their Vision 2030 to get more people active.
True.
So the investment that's going in that space, the role that we can play, the difference that we can make, that's really, really exciting. I think probably if we were in a mature market that's growing in kind of low single-digit percentage points, maybe a different story, but to be able to make such a significant difference in this region where, we've got a long way to go to get the population fitter and healthier, that's exciting. That's what gets me out of bed every morning and gets me moving.
Inspiring, and the fact that it's the whole region, not only the region, the awareness about the health and wellness, it's exponentially growing.
100%.
But the unfortunate news that I just read recently, a new research saying that the obesity and the chronic diseases by 2035, I think it will exponentially also grow.
Correct.
And it goes back, but I really love the fact that even the organization or individual level, people becoming more skewed towards the sense of impact and becoming part of a mission of a company, which is impressive. Of course, there are choices. I'm not talking about the generational differences,
Sure.
but it's the energy that it's obvious when we had the initial conversation about the company and individuals joining any company, that if there is an impact towards something really beneficial, let's double down. And as you said, it's like the Dubai, the penetration is quite improved because of maybe the expatriation, but in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in Qatar,
Correct.
you have a lot of opportunities where people are really interested, but they don't have maybe the tool, or they don't know how to access these tools, which is amazing.
Yeah, and you touched on the amount of research that we do. Our New Zealand clubs, we kind of call them the lab because rightly or wrongly, our Kiwis are guinea pigs for everything that we do.
Generate.
But we do a lot of research, and that's because everything that we do has to be backed by science. Everything that we do has to work, because that awareness, when we want to get people engaged, and you've got to engage. People understand that doing any kind of physical activity is going to be beneficial.
True.
But if we can make that activity more beneficial, more purposeful, get better results, whether it be in terms of improving their cardiovascular fitness or, as you mentioned, obesity is a challenge in this region.
True.
If we can do anything that's actually going to lead to them getting better results, that then, that snowballs, that gives them the momentum to keep training as well. So it's important that what we do works.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you have the experience, you have the footprints. So I think you have a lot of opportunity to have a positive impact. But I didn't realize what you mentioned a while ago, that it's like the whole back-end programs are designed by Les Mills, which is, okay, that's really cool. But yeah, I see the value, and where we can add value when it comes to the whole region and even globally. Recently, I realized that Les Mills is moving to another vertical, which is I don't like to call it mental health. I like to call it mental fitness, which is something totally different in my opinion. Where are you on this journey? It's like something that I started to notice that most of the organization, but a company like Les Mills, again, they have the accessibility, they have the resources. Where are we on that phase?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I think one of the good things, if there's anything that came out of the pandemic, was it really brought mental health to the forefront.
Surface.
And people started, when we were disconnected from our friends and family and, spending our lives on screens, we started to talk about it a lot more. arguably, I think now we've kind of, everything's kind of returned back to normal, and
True.
I think the conversations are less and less, which, and it's important we continue to discuss this. But it is, when we talk about Fitter Planet, we're not talking about just healthier bodies, you have a healthier mind. And again, my journey, I learned the important part of that, how important that is, by kind of going the wrong way. And it cost me my first marriage. It cost me, probably, I was in that hole that I talked about. And I realised that I need to keep myself in balance, and I need to keep my team in balance. And so, it's something that's really, really important to the company. It's something that's really important to it should be important to everyone. And what I'm seeing now, which is unfortunate, is now we're starting to see the power slip back towards employers, because for a while all the power was with employees.
I see.
The power is slipping back to employers, that people are starting to care less and less and less about it, or talk less and less and less about it. So we need to talk about it more. With my journey, I learned the hard way how important that is.
Take me through the journey, because I know, and I know, luckily I had the honor to speak also with some of my friends about their journey, and we can tap into this topic, but I'm really interested to know, because it's obvious that you are passionate about it, because you've been there, you've done that, and now it's obvious that it's a personal mission, not even the company's mission, because I know the value of it, and I went through the try to, at least from the corporate side, to introduce this way of thinking. But as you mentioned, when it comes to the bureaucracy and the systems, that it's more like profitability driven, unfortunately. You see the negative impact on the employees that leads to burnouts and like frustrations and all the domino effect that happens after that. But I'm really interested how you realize that this is your mission, and how you went through this and you overcome it.
Yeah, well, I think the challenge is it's so intangible, right? I mean, you can measure physical fitness, but you can't really measure in the same way your mental health. And so for me, I don't know. I know when I'm in balance only because I know when I'm not. And so it's kind of like anything. If you don't know you've got an issue until you feel the issue.
True.
And so, as I said, I went through a really, really challenging period. Again, it was around that same time. I just sold the organisation, went into it. I was working really, really long hours, 11 p.m. every night. I just got married, and just took for granted that my new wife would be there for me, understood kind of what I was going through, and took that for granted. And then that blew up, and obviously went through the challenges after selling the business as well. And I realised that everything was out of balance, everything was out of kilter, and it took me a while to come out of that. And I think that's what made me realise that it is an important priority, and it's something you need to prioritise.
True.
And you certainly will know when you haven't, and that's the challenge. It's talking about it, making people aware of it. Because by the time you become aware, it's often too late. That's when someone's kind of, the pendulum swung the other side. So, and it's tough as an employer to measure that. If you have a big team, it's something you can talk about.
True.
But it's not like physical fitness where it's there and it's tangible.
It's evident.
It's evident, yeah. So it is a tough one. And during COVID, we talked about it a lot. People were having check-ins on their team and talking about, just asking, how are you?
Yeah.
Are you okay? And having those conversations from a good place, because everyone was kind of in this unknown territory where we were in lockdowns and there was this, what we thought at the time was this killer virus out there, decimating the world. And so we talked about mental health a lot, and now less so. So it's an important conversation. It's a conversation we need to continue to have.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's like we don't feel the symptoms. We feel basically the result of it, which is scarier because it's not evident and you cannot monitor it on a daily basis. But you realize that when you fall in the trenches, it's like
and then
you wake up on the reality of how can I. But what's really, I'm really interested about this conversation about the mental health. And again, we have to give COVID the credit that it opened the discussions about this one. But what I'm really now interested, and I would love to hear your perspective, is not, we have to keep the conversation and increase the awareness about this topic. But what I'm really interested now, on a personal level, is to encourage people to ask friends, about how they are doing, and just try to not to give advice, because this is most of us, we fall into this trap, that we give the advice or opinion based on our perception, and where it's really important to just have an ear, just work on your listening skills, basic stuff. But what I'm really interested, this is where I talked about the mental health and mental fitness, because now I'm treating the mental fitness as if it's a physical exercise, and no one knows it better than you. But the fact that the mental health as if it's a destination, and okay, if I'm good at it, it's okay. But where I'm trying to really push for is to bring the conversation around friends, colleagues, as you said, that on daily basis, ask how you're doing.
100%.
Everything is bothering you? Let's chat. I'm listening to you. So speak out. And I think this is where there is a lot of effort to double down, but it's unfortunate, as you mentioned, that it's moving to the employer and it's becoming less controlled.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche, but I think cliches are cliches for
Cliché,
a reason,
cliché for reason. Repetition is important.
It's okay not to be okay, and I think as an employer, that's really, really powerful, that you can actually give your team permission to not be okay, because in this, and we're the worst in the fitness industry. Rise and grind and the hustle culture, and the 1% that you see on social media, the ones that are crossfitting and 6% body fat, and so we're part of the problem actually, but just giving your team permission to not be okay.
True.
and allowing that space, and I think that helps. I mean, I'd love to say I've got the answers, and I don't, but I think that is 9/10 of the battle, is just actually having those conversations, and then it being okay for someone saying, actually, I'm not, I need a bit of time,
some space, some distance.
and how can we support? And we have at Les Mills, we're that is an important aspect of what we do, and we have lots of options open for our team members, but I think our organisation is probably in the minority in that space. So.
Yeah, I think it should be a personal mission just to speak out more about this topic and try to put more pressure on the employer how to do not this kind of team building activities, because I've been there, I've done that. It's like one spike and voila, you have nothing. How are you taking care of yourself now?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I learned the hard way. So I mean, there's four kind of pillars to what as I said, I only know when I'm in balance, because I know when I'm not. And I know when I'm not in balance when one of these four things is out of kilter. So as I said before, when I wasn't working for an organisation where I felt like I was really making a difference, that threw me right out. So that's an important one. Physical fitness, obviously. Again, there are days. This morning I woke up, I didn't want to train, but I did. But if I hadn't trained, that would have been fine, and I would have wanted to train more tomorrow because I'd missed my workout. So that's really, really important. Growth and development, like doing something that I guess continues to progress your knowledge, and doing my MBA at the moment, and then love my family. You have to prioritise your family. And as I said before, I've made the mistake of not doing that, of taking that for granted, and that cost me my first marriage. So now, I mean, my team will tell you I'm first in the office. I'm in the office by 7 a.m, but I'm the first to leave as well. I'm out the door before 5, and that's because my son's bedtime is at 7, and if I don't get out by 5, I don't get to put him to bed. So that's for me. That's really, and that gives my team permission to do the same. And I think that is really, really important as well. So, yeah, those are the four things that are, I guess, keep me centered and keep me grounded. And if I'm feeling great, then I know those things are in check. And when one of them isn't, that's when something's askew, and you've got to kind of steady the ship.
I love it. I love how you put it. It's a nice framework. I think everyone can get inspired, because sometimes, again, if you don't have like a set of, I wouldn't say routine, because routine puts people in boxes, but at least there are kind of like pillars or values or principles that I can stick to. But I think your approach to things and how you become a leadership, type of leadership that people get inspired with, I think this is important. Sometimes we think when we are in a certain position that we can give instruction, but what I favored, and I learned this because I'm a dad, and realized that instead of giving instruction to my kids to do X, Y, Z, I just do it.
Yeah.
And they will exactly be inspired and try to do something like me or even better. This is where you realize, okay, I've done something good here.
Yeah.
But I think you are positioning in a very good way that your practices, your commitment to the family, because we can talk about this forever as a dad and as a mom, working mom, that if they don't prioritize their families, this is where their peacefulness or the recovery that comes in before they go to the work,
Yeah.
which is important. How can you describe your leadership?
Yeah, so I mean, it all starts with the team, right? I mean, again, another cliche.
It's-
Find good people and get out of their way.
By the way, I believe in repetition.
Yeah.
Let's put the title "Cliché Topics" and give your perspective.
all the good ideas are taken.
There is no novel idea, by the way. Glenn.
Yeah, exactly.
I learned this the funny way. I read a lot of amazing book. If you go to the references, all of them cliché.
Yeah,
You can label them
exactly.
cliché.
Exactly.
It's your perspective, and I highly respect it. So keep going.
But lead with your heart. I remember I was on a leadership retreat once, and one of my colleagues, and it was another market CEO, said to me, "You have too much empathy," and that's because I really care, right? And so the team, and so you find good people, as I said, and get out of their way, and so really and caring about the team, and as I said, that permission that I give the team to take time if they need it. I mean, we work hard, we play hard. If people want time out, it's that's fine. That's actually what you want.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's empathy's the key point, and then your team flourish, and that's how you really make a difference.
Yeah. Sometimes going back to the traditional way of the corporate way of thinking, empathy is not part of the discussions either. Because unfortunately, if you look into the past 100 years, the industrial revolution put everything like in a structure as if you are in a factory. And now the companies, and again, we give the credit to COVID, that it's changed the narrative about how people should work in an office, how to become more productive, how to become more empathetic, and at least to have this kind of like awareness about the mental and physical. And you tapped to something really interesting, and I'll give you the whole credit, and I'm really passionate about this topic. Definitely is the self-awareness. And I think it's a topic that I'm trying even to push more, that if it's a skill, and it takes time to at least to get used to understanding yourself mentally and physically. And I really appreciate the fact that you have this self-awareness, but it's a journey. I'm not saying that everyone it's perfect. It's an ongoing journey, how to really discover yourself mentally, physically, when you're out of balance, how can I regulate this? What are the compromises? And but yeah, do you think one day that you're gonna leave the fitness and wellness industry?
I don't know. I've actually asked myself that question before, and I think if you had asked me that 5 years ago, the answer would have been absolutely not. Mm-hmm. But I think I mean, as you get older, I'm in my 40s, so you've got the benefit of hindsight. I think as long as I'm making a difference in the world, and that could be in another capacity, I think potentially. But as I said before, the thing I love about the industry in this region is we are really, really making a difference to to people's lives, and that's really exciting. I guess what kind of got me out of bed previously was setting up startups and building businesses, and now what's getting me out of bed is making a real difference in this part of the world. I think if I didn't feel like I was doing that anymore, I'd probably be asking myself what's next, because that first pillar, that purpose pillar, would be out of kilter. And that self-awareness you talked about, I mean, again, it's come from making so many mess-ups that you learn the hard way. So you learn what doesn't work, and then you realise what's important to you. So, leaving the industry and realising that I was lost. I've got to go back. Messing up a relationship. Okay, I've got to prioritise that.
Yeah.
All of there was a period actually over that same time, over that period where I said I was lost, where I deprioritised health. I did, put on weight, and learned the hard way how much that threw me off.
Yeah.
So all of those things, that self-awareness only came from making a lot of mistakes along the way.
We spoke about it before about the I would say when you look in the rear mirror and you understand the failure that you went through, how important is it for you now? But it's obvious that we mentioned, I will underline and make it bold about the age. And I think this comes with it, the wisdom about, okay, what's the value? What I've been doing in the past, like 20 years in my career, and what my next. But honestly, I asked this question because I cannot see you in another industry now.
Yeah, well, neither can I actually, but never say never. That's something else.
This is, of course, being open-minded and open to opportunities. But as you mentioned, this space now, if you look into the history, now became more interested how to take care of themselves physically, and now moving to the mental fitness. It's growing, and again, we are fortunate in a region that its trajectory, it's an emerging market. So I can give you like 10 years minimum, but
Thanks.
but I'm not telling you any offer.
I'll revisit this in 10 years.
Yeah, well, that's why it's like it's recorded, it's online, so anyone can track you. So it's a pleasure to have you, Glenn. It's really nice. It's again, I mentioned several times that I have like interesting people that I'm really to engage with, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm really interested to let people where can they find you?
So probably the best place to find me is LinkedIn, actually, believe it or not. There are 2 Glen Stollorys. One's a hairdresser. That's not me.
I didn't know that. It was easy to find.
And yeah, that's probably the best way to find me. And I mean, you and I were laughing about this before the show. You know, after we connected, we realised how many mutual friends and associates we have. You know, the industry is, globally 2 degrees of separation, I believe. And here in the UAE, it's like everyone.
It's quite. I'm sure that after this, I'm sure that we have a lot of acquaintances and common friends. But as you mentioned, it's not only on the UAE and globally. It's really connected, especially with the social media. It became much smaller globally.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's amazing. But yeah, I wish you all the best, Glenn, and definitely we're gonna have more conversation around the health and wellness.
And I'll get you in one of our classes soon.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Do you challenge me in any martial arts? What do you do, by the way? I didn't ask you which martial arts.
Started with Taekwondo and then did a form of karate, but it was Ruka Kempo karate. So it was kind of grappling and small joint.
I love, because I practiced a little bit of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I failed with them miserably, as everyone starts. But again, I would accept any challenge. I'm open.
Watch your space.
Glenn, a pleasure to have you, man. It's really cool. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like the show, follow us. We are on your favorite podcast applications and YouTube podcast, which is something started last week, which is amazing. And special thanks to my son, 14 years old. He's helping me in the podcast editing. He's not cheap. I'm paying him. So, Superhuman Switch. Get your switch on. Glenn, pleasure.
Thanks, Sam.